Okay, everybody, this is the Sustainability and Resiliency Committee's November meeting, and we'll just go around the table with introductions, starting on my right.
Shelley Byron, I work for the City of Fargo, taking notes.
Nicole Crutchfield, Planning Director.
Ben Dow with Public Works.
Greta Graymig, I'm a public representative.
Bruce Grubb, Fargo City Administrator.
Sean Paschke, XL Energy.
Brenda Derrig, City Engineer.
Tim Mahoney, Mayor.
And we have online, Blake, do you want to introduce yourself?
Blake Meixel, Fargo Public Schools.
Okay, and we have one more joining us. Paul, you can just introduce yourself as you sit down.
Paul Mathis, Cass County Electric Cooperative.
Good timing. Thanks, everybody. You have your agendas in front of you. I have one topic that we'll be adding to the agenda after item number 5, and that's a brief presentation by Daryl Lewandowski. The last meeting we had, we discussed those plastic bags for reusable plastic bags for the students. She had reached out to Blake, so we'll get an update on that before our meeting ends today. So is there anything else to change or add to the agenda? We'll just go informally. We don't need votes and everything. We'll just continue forward then. Minutes. Does anybody have any corrections or additions to the minutes from the September meeting? Move to approve. Approve second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The meeting minutes will be posted. Bruce, why don't you introduce our next presentation today?
I would be happy to do that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A little bit of background to this topic. In the latter part of September, Commissioner Strand received a communication from Patrick Summer. And Patrick's with the International Dark Skies Association, and they are an advocacy group and really a recognized authority on light pollution. And Patrick was reaching out to the commissioner to encourage Fargo to start at least discussing, maybe addressing increased levels of artificial night lighting. And generally, when most people think about pollution, you go back to my time in the 70s, the last thing you think about is light. But it is a real thing. So Commissioner Strand and I, along with Brenda Derrig, our city engineer, and Jeremy Gordon, our traffic engineer, met with Patrick on September 28th in City Hall here to have an initial discussion on this topic, and concluded that this might be really good for the Sustainability and Resiliency Committee to hear. So we invited Patrick to join us today to introduce the committee to this topic, this issue, along with some suggestions that he would like to offer going forward. Things are being done in other cities across the United States, and so Patrick is aware of some of those things, and I'm sure we'll touch on those. So Patrick's joining us virtually today. Fortunate he was able to join us in that manner, and I'd like to welcome him and thank him for being here. And Patrick, I think we've got you all loaded up, ready to go, and so I'll turn it over to you and give you the floor.
Well, thank you, sir. Mr. Mayor, Commissioner Strand, committee members. First of all, everybody's hearing me just fine?
Yes.
All right, outstanding. Thank you again for the invitation. I'm joining to you from a scenic hotel room in Maryland today. Thank you for the opportunity to present virtually. As was alluded to, I'm a resident of Fargo. I am married, have 2 daughters. One's a junior at UND and one's a senior at Cheyenne. Reason I'm out here and not in the chambers is that I'm also a full-time member of the Guard. As far as this meeting is concerned, however, I am a member of the International Dark Sky Association, which, as was mentioned, is an advocacy group calling attention to light pollution as a major environmental concern, not just here in Fargo, but around the world. For as long as I can remember, I've been interested in space exploration and the night skies. And for really about the past 10 years, I've felt a deeper need to address the growing environmental emergency at large, but that's a big topic. Light pollution is one area that meshes with my interests and is the niche I've chosen to participate a little bit deeper in. I'm going to start up a slide deck here. And if you don't end up seeing it on screen, someone please let me know, not that one. Here we go. All right, hopefully everybody's seeing a title slide called Saving Dark Skies. All right, as I mentioned and as I was alluded to, light pollution is a growing concern around the world. So we're going to talk a little bit about the following subjects: what light pollution is, some consequences of light pollution, mitigation techniques and making a difference. We'll briefly look at one case study, and we'll wrap up with lighting principles and some calls to action for what I hope to accomplish over the next few years. Also on the slide is one of my favorite quotes that references the sky. Only in darkness can you see the stars, from Martin Luther King Jr. So what is light pollution? It's any adverse effect of artificial, and that is the key word, artificial, light at night. This isn't moon or starlight, or even the light from a fire or a candle, or even in the olden days, an oil-fed light. The invention of distribution of electric light is where the problem really got started. It comes in three main forms: sky glow, glare, and light trespass. And before I go forward, if anyone has any questions, feel free to shout them out. I'd also like to state that I'm not a scientist. I'm not an engineer. I'm just a concerned person that has an interest in the sky above and some of the health impacts that come with polluting that sky. So what is sky glow? This one might be one you're most familiar with. It's the dome of brightness on the horizon that obscures our view of the night sky. It's caused by misdirected light scattering through our atmosphere. This is a photo from outside of Tucson, Arizona. You can see that city's sky glow on the right, and over to the left, where it's a little bit darker, the camera is able to pick out the Milky Way. It's one of the more familiar forms of light pollution in terms of viewing night skies, as its impact can be seen from mostly rural settings, nearby communities. Glare is another one. Have you ever been driving down that lonely road out in the country at night? You're blinded by oncoming high beams. That is glare. It's caused by light entering our eyes at shallow angles. It can cause pain and restriction of the pupils, which reduces visual acuity. However, it's not just a straight-on headlight or spotlight type of issue. Street lights or house lights can cause glare issues, and it can be a danger to bicyclists or even pedestrians on the street at night. Light trespass. This is an interesting one, and one I'm doing a little more research on. If you've been kept awake at night by a light streaming into your bedroom from the neighbor's house or even the street light on your corner, it's a prime example of light trespass. It's when light is falling outside of a property boundary onto another property or home. We can think of this as a private property rights issue, and as I mentioned, it's not limited to personal property. I know of some people that have written to cities before asking that their street lights on their residential areas be dialed down a bit because they've upgraded to LEDs and now they're having to buy blackout curtains, et cetera, et cetera. If you need a reference, I'll point you out to my daughter who lives on the only street-facing bedroom at her home. She's kind of annoyed right now. All right. Light pollution in general has had drastic consequences and effects. So let me ask you, before we get into some of those specific consequences, if you're one of the lucky ones. Right now, only 2 out of 10 people on Earth live in a spot where they can look up and see the Milky Way. That's without driving a little bit of a distance to look up and see it. 99% of the USA and Europe live under what we can call light polluted skies. I don't know if this is going to translate real well onto your big screen or not, but this is a sky comparison I've made. On the left is Buffalo River State Park from back in 2017, and Itasca State Park just a few months back. Both were taken with similar f-stops, ISO, and exposure time settings on my camera. But at Buffalo River, you can easily see the sky glow issues from the Fargo metro area. You can still see the Milky Way, and you can still see it with the naked eye. But with the naked eye, it's a very thin trail. Over in Itasca, meanwhile, when you look up, it's almost a spiritual experience when you see not only the Milky Way, but the thousands of other stars that we can make out. And obviously the camera can do much better than our eye, hence the better color rendering on it. You might think we'd never see such a sky over our city, but it's possible to see with the right techniques, maybe a Buffalo River quality Milky Way on the outskirts of Fargo, and an Itasca State Park quality at some place like Buffalo River State Park. This is just a little more intense graphic of how light pollution has increased nationwide since the 50s up through projected 2025. It's increasing at over 2% per year now, greater than the rate of population growth. And virtually no area in this country is immune. Before long, even the Western Plains and mountain regions will be impacted dramatically by light pollution. A little more locally, this is from a VERS satellite image of the region that we occupy, Minneapolis down on the lower right, Fargo right there kind of in the middle, and off to our west, what used to be a very good quality dark sky not so long ago, the Bakken oil patch. We're not going to talk about that, although I could for an hour or two if you want. What are some consequences of light pollution? There's a number of them beyond the simple loss of the quality.
Patrick,
yes, sir.
Hold just 1 second. We're trying to get your attention for the question here.
Oh, okay.
Could you just back your presentation up to the projection for the light pollution?
This one?
Yeah. So just curious with that, with cities, municipals, utilities switching to LEDs for, for street lighting, signal lighting, yard lighting in the rural areas, is that all taken into account with the future projections of light pollution? I mean, I would assume that the directional LED lighting has reduced light pollution and will in the future as we see more. I mean, there isn't a lot of high pressure sodiums or metal halides or metal mercury vapors going in anymore.
You are correct. This, and actually though, the sensors that are on some of the satellites, specifically this VERS image, this actually doesn't pick up LED emissions real well. It picks up mostly older style sodium lights, halogen lights. It doesn't sense the white-blue wavelengths coming from the majority of LEDs. That's why the Bakken is such prominent on this, while some of the cities are a little bit less so. Street lights, municipal systems are making strides. A lot of the issues with the light pollution impacts are being transferred, however, from straight up more towards surface level problems, which we'll get to as well. There's another phrase that we're looking at is that we're not trying to make the ground dark. We're trying to make the ground a little bit healthier and keep the skies dark. There's a health concern in addition to maintaining that light facing down. And yes, you are correct. A large number of cities out there are starting to address the directionality of their lights and the intensity of their lights. That's made easier a little bit by some of the communities that are actually embracing full-blown city ordinances, at least on the municipal side, not necessarily the residential and commercial.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, and I've got my slides on full screen on my own computer, so yeah, do shout out if you need to interrupt, as I won't see the presentation software's hand raising. All right. All right, the consequences, we'll look at a few different items that come up when you talk about light pollution. Some of these you may be aware of because they're kind of famous. Some you might not be. And I will try to spend as little time as possible on them for myself, but feel free to ask questions. Ecological impacts are up first. This is kind of the poster child for light pollution, if you will. This is what a lot of people started to hear about first when this issue started making news. Sea turtles. We don't have any of those here. But if you're a sea turtle and you're hatching from an egg on a coast, they oriented themselves upon hatching to what was historically the brightest part of their landscape. That was the ocean reflecting starlight and moonlight. Inland was pitch black. However, with the advent of cities, beachfront building associations and condos and roads, behind them became brighter than the ocean, and they would get turned around and start walking or crawling across highways in mass numbers. This has also made strides, though, in recent years. A lot of communities have banded together to have lights out events for turtles during hatching season. But this was one of the initial headline-making creatures to bring our attention to the problem. Much more familiar and impactful in our local area are the problems that birds experience due to light pollution. If you've seen lights out for birds hashtag on social media, that's what we're talking about. Birds are kind of like moths. Many of them are attracted to bright lights at night. Birds also migrate using celestial navigation. When birds are confronted by large, brightly lit skylines of urban areas, it can be one too many challenges to overcome. They're tired, they're attracted to the light pollution, and if they get over that city, they won't necessarily be able to rechart their course. Eventually, they'll get lost, land in a strange environment. In places like New York City, for example, in the early years of the Twin Towers Memorial, literally hundreds, if not thousands of birds would just fall out of the sky after the memorial was lit up for the evening. Hundreds of millions to billions of birds die from collisions every year in North America, and a lot of these are caused by light pollution, pulling them off course into metro areas. We do live on a flyway. It's the Central Corridor, and we're nudged up against the Mississippi Flyway. As I mentioned, large number of birds migrate at night. A large number of those are navigating via celestial navigation. If they can't see the sky, they're going to get lost, and they will have some pretty not good situations develop for their flocks. The IDA feels so strongly on this particular issue that in 2020, we formally partnered with the Audubon Society to mutually educate our members and the public on this shared light pollution problem. In North Dakota, over 300 species of birds migrate every fall and spring. Just turning off the lights for 20 to 30 minutes can greatly reduce the density of birds in an area and help them get along the way safely. We'll come back on this subject a bit later. Plants, I'll be honest, this is the one I haven't researched as much, but plants can be affected by light pollution. Those exposed to artificial light at night can bud earlier, they can lose their leaves later and have shorter lifespans. You can see by the images on the screen that street light has been causing some problems for both of those trees. A recent study also found that some invasive plants that you might not want growing in your area actually do better under artificial light. Cheatgrass, which was named cheatgrass because it was used to cut seed quality in the 19th and early 20th century, apparently grows better under artificial lights at night out in the wild. So if you don't want certain invasive species, start dealing with light pollution. Human health. This is an important one because we are not untouched by the problem of light pollution. We evolved on this planet with reliable cycles of light and dark. The addition of artificial light into what has always been a period of darkness disrupts our natural circadian rhythms and the internal cycle that syncs our biological clock with the day-night cycle. Our circadian rhythm is mediated by the hormone melatonin. This production can be suppressed when we are exposed to the wrong wavelengths of light at night, specifically blue-white lights that mimic what we experience under a daytime sun. This can mess with our health. It's exemplified by the fact that exposure to light at night has been linked to an increased risk for numerous forms of cancer, with specific research being conducted in breast and prostate cancers, as well as additional risks in obesity, diabetes, mood disorders, reproductive issues. The list goes on. In a 2016 report, the American Medical Association recommended to shield streetlights and use lights that are 3000 K, which stands for Kelvin. We'll talk about that in a bit, or lower. The bottom line, a growing list of academic and medical research has connected light and failing to maintain our diurnal cycle, link those problems to ill health effects. And this is not just a street light thing. I'm sure you're all aware that your phones have night modes now. It's not a good idea to watch TV right before bed, et cetera, et cetera. This is just a general health problem, but communities can do their part by lowering the temperature of those lights outside. Energy waste. This is another big problem with light pollution. By About 35% of lighting worldwide is considered wasted, meaning that it shoots out to the side or up into the sky and not down to the subject we're trying to illuminate. When you do the math, as IDA did, becomes about $3 to $7 billion a year of wasted energy costs, with about 21 million tons of CO2 released into the atmosphere burned by unnecessary lighting or inappropriately directed lighting. If you're looking to be a community that wishes to address our environmental issues, save some money, and dramatically reduce your greenhouse gas emission levels, this is one path you can take. Address the light pollution. You'll save some money and contribute to reducing overall levels of greenhouse gas emissions in your community. A lot of times when you start talking about environmental emergencies, the environmental crisis, it seems like a big, overarching, hard to get your hands around problem. Lighting, light pollution within an area, something that's not an impossible reach. All right, the next slide, I wanted to bring it in here because there's another aspect of it which is gaining in importance out there in the community. Talk a few minutes about safety and justice. The image here is taken from a recent documentary on New York housing projects where the mayor's office, New York City Housing Authority, and the New York Police Department deployed nearly 200 diesel generator driven light towers in quote unquote high crime areas. The tower each one emitted some 600,000 lumens of light in addition to the noise and diesel exhaust fumes. Statistics did show slight reductions in criminality, but the trade-off was that, livability and public health were also potentially seriously impacted. Light pollution is pollution, and it's becoming thought of as just every other industrial physical pollutant. Mr. Grubb alluded to in the 70s and late 60s when we awakened to all the junk in our rivers, in our waters, in our air. Light is starting to be thought of in a similar fashion. And much as those other issues were sometimes concentrated in poor or underserved areas, frequently lived in by people of color and lower economic classes, excessive lighting is often focused in those same areas, typically in the name of safety. I've done a little bit of driving around the FM area, and I'm not going to go out and say that this is a major problem here, but it is something I wouldn't want to see get out of hand, where you're just lighting up the night specifically in the name of safety when it doesn't actually reduce anything, which we're about to talk about. A lot of people assume that the more light you use around your property, the safer you will be. When I was a student up at UND, I was actually on a committee for the residence halls that would walk around at night, point out shadows, and say, we need to put a light there. All you did was make another shadow just around the corner. The research is inconclusive at best that lighting impacts safety in a positive manner. U.S. National Institute of Justice study concluded we can have very little confidence that improved lighting prevents crime. In fact, poor or too much lighting can actually have the opposite effect. Real security depends on the wise use of lighting. Visibility should always be the goal. Instead of more or brighter lights, we need smart lighting that directs it where it is most useful. Let's see here. All right, you might be able to make this guy out, this creepy looking dude in the background, but most people can't on their screens, especially if they're in a lit room. Glare from a bright, unshielded light can actually decrease safety. This makes a shadow where a criminal can hide. All this light means that criminals can also see the contents of parked cars and case the area for onlookers, all without the need of using their flashlights or any other lighting source of their own, which could point them out to someone else that they're in the area. Block up that light, and all of a sudden that creepy guy in the bad Hawaiian shirt is more than visible, and you know that there is a potential threat in the area. Again, with that unshielded, old school pack light on the wall, hard to see him. Put light where it's needed, which is on the gate, and you can make him out. Wrap up the safety argument. Again, research is inconclusive at best. Back in 2008, They reviewed about 13 published studies on street lighting and crime, found mixed evidence to support a connection. Most American cities showed little to no effect of lighting on crime. 2000 study over in the UK, 2015 study in the UK found no evidence that dimming or turning off streetlights at night affected crime rates or provided for reduction of vehicle accidents. They found, again, slight evidence that dimming lights was related to an aggregate reduction in overall crime. And as I mentioned, increased lighting may be beneficial to would-be criminals because they need to see what they're doing too. In 2000, the Chicago metro area did a study to boost lighting levels in alleys across the city that were considered high crime. Offenses increased in more well-lit areas relative to the control areas that they kept dim. Moving past safety, there's another slightly more ambiguous but very important part of the night sky that you risk losing when you brighten everything up. Our heritage and inspirational values of basically evolving in the dark. Excuse me. It's a precious natural resource for everybody on Earth, not just humans either. And the glow of uncontrolled outdoor lighting has hidden the stars and changed our perception of the night. How we interact with it has moved more from a mood of reverence and respect to one very nearly of fear. And that has put some of our shared cultural heritage at risk. The night sky has historically inspired us. Think about some of the things that we would not have without our knowledge of the stars, which came from a black sky punctuated with thousands of lights. Science, religion, philosophy, art, and literature would not have been what they are now. We wouldn't have developed navigation techniques. There's just simply a lot of things that we would not have today if we had evolved in the level of light pollution that we currently have. Another one of my favorite quotes, that one from Van Gogh, who incidentally would not be able to see the starry night he painted if he lived there today. Okay, I've laid the foundations that there's a lot of issues with light pollution, but we can make a difference, mostly because we know what the problem is. We know it's increasing, but this is a pollution that we can solve literally at the speed of light. Each individual action can make a difference, but we can work together with communities on larger scales to make changes that better benefit everyone. One of those changes would be with ordinances and to focus on better lighting design. 4 primary elements of design that the IDA looks at are shielding, color, intensity, and ward. Shielding is pretty easy. Just make sure that the light doesn't escape from the direction you want it to go. On the left, you've got some unshielded wall packs. On the right, you've got shielded packs that are focusing the light exclusively on the driveway entrance to those garage doors. Just as much needed light on that approach. Nothing's getting into your glare, periphery vision, or escaping upwards. Aim your lights where you need them. Some more examples of shielding. Including on that right a photo of an unshielded 4000K LED light from New Zealand, which is, well, not just lighting the street, but pretty much everything around it for a couple hundred feet. Again, a compliant, fully shielded light would not let anything escape its horizon level. Another example of shielding, this one an upward-facing spot. Basically, your intention here is to try not to let any light escape whatever wall you're pointing at. If you're illuminating the side of a building, it doesn't get up and over that building, for example. I've mentioned K or Kelvin. This refers to the light temperature, and at times this can be confusing, including for myself, as temperature also equates to color. It's the color-rated color temperature of the light. At the lower end of the spectrum, you have yellow warmish light between 2700 and 3000 Kelvin, all the way up to that 6500 K on the right, which is bright daylight. And this isn't just a discussion right here in this chart for outdoor lights, but also something to keep in mind for indoor lights. My wife has a fondness for daylight bulbs, and I keep telling her to turn those things off at 9:30 at night. Make it 6 because we do not want to be exposed to that light too close to bedtime. It's far better for human and animal health after the sun goes down. to keep your light temperature in the warm 3000 K and lower spectrum range. Intensity and warding are two additional important and sometimes overlooked aspects of lighting design. Even if we shield every light, some light will be reflected off the surface of an object being illuminated. This can be controlled with intensity. If you've got a 6500 K light shining down on a wide patch of white grayish concrete, some of that is going to be shined back up into the sky. Dial it down into 3000 K or so, produce a warmer light. You won't produce as much of a reflection. Warranting is simply the act of deciding, do we actually need this light here in the first place? Remember back to that safety slide, you didn't need a bright wall pack illuminating everything in the yard. You just needed a light shining on that gate, and you didn't need it on all the time. So if you warrant a light, even go further and consider like a motion detector or something like that to keep it off when you do not need it. I referenced ordinances a little bit ago. This is one of my key points of action over the next few years, talking to committees and folks such as yourself, looking to start a dialogue on regaining some control of the light pollution that we are generating as communities and residents, and urging community leaders to enact night sky friendly lighting ordinances. To my knowledge, Fargo and its neighboring communities lack much in the way of dark sky friendly policies. We can, however, be part of a growing number of cities embracing the practice. Tucson, Pittsburgh, Ann Arbor, Michigan are just a few. We can limit light pollution generated by municipal governments and their agencies, save hundreds if not millions a year, cut back in GHG emissions, and present a healthier living place to residents. Real quick, I'm going to go through one case study, and this is Tucson, Arizona, who back in 2012 enacted an outdoor lighting ordinance that was dedicated to preserving their night skies and keeping it as dark as possible, mostly because they had a lot of wilderness areas and critically some astronomy facilities nearby. In 2016, that city developed an additional plan to convert 20,000 streetlights to LEDs with adaptive controls. By adaptive, I mean dimmer technology. Their projected savings were $180,000 per month and 60% reduction in lumen output from their municipal lighting. Completed in 2018 with over 19,500 fixtures replaced with 3,000 K LED bulbs. The adaptive systems were operated or are operated with a dimmer system. 90% capacity is used from sunset until midnight, and most lights on this system are reduced to 60% capacity from midnight until being turned off completely 30 minutes before sunrise. That is an image of a Tucson intersection. In that image, there's basically one light I can see right about in the middle above the train, the commuter train, that doesn't seem to meet the criteria. Almost everything else, fully shielded, warranted, shining on the ground. Again, we're not trying to make the ground dark. We're trying to keep the sky dark and our environment healthy. The results, total lumen output from street lighting was reduced from 481 million to 181 million lumens. When reduced to the 60% capacity after midnight, the total output was reduced to 134 million lumens, a 72% reduction. They're seeing over 2 million in annual energy savings, with the expected lifetime of their luminaries extended from 8 years on their old system, which was high pressure sodiums, to 25 years. Again, an overall general 63% reduction in total lumens. Blue light, and that's critical, blue light emissions were reduced by 34%, and an overall reduction in the total light emissions from the Tucson Metro of 7%. Now, that's not at all the entire light output, but educational efforts have produced dramatic results in the residential and corporate business world as well, because they have made switches over that time span as well. All right, we're close to wrapping up my presentation. These are 5 principles to responsible outdoor lighting that the IDA and Illuminating Engineering Society put together. Number 1, all light should have a clear purpose. Is it useful? Before installing or replacing a light, simply decide, do you actually need this light there? Especially think about that if you're in a potentially sensitive area near wildlife and other environmental concerns. Targeted, light directed only to where it's actually needed. Don't use any light levels or intensities brighter than you actually need. Be mindful of surface conditions, as some surfaces will have an albedo reflect and send that light back into the sky. Controlled, if you can, use timers and motion detectors to ensure light is available when it's needed, dimmed when possible, and turned off if not at all. And color, use the warmer color lights whenever possible. If you're in the residential market, IDA has partnered with the big box stores. You can find this logo, maybe not on the shelves in everyone, but they do stock them. And to wrap things up, International Dark Sky Association, as I said, we protect the night from light pollution and promote responsible outdoor lighting. Now the big takeaway coming up. Oh, one more slide. IDA works globally to protect and preserve the natural nighttime environment. Here's what I'm looking to do long term. I am hoping to work with yourself, with Moorhead, with West Fargo, with Dilworth and the Horace and Harwood areas to work towards a modern, dark sky friendly lighting ordinances at some point. Obviously, we're not in an island, just Fargo. We have to work with the other cities because if, say, Moorhead enacted dark sky friendly policy and Fargo did not, it wouldn't work that well. We should also consider incorporating lighting into whatever comprehensive climate and environmental plan comes out of the current discussion points for this committee and creating an overall healthier environment for our residents. I would like to encourage a lights out event, potentially around bird migration seasons in the fall, spring, both, where for a night or two, for an hour or two on a specific evening, we try to shut down as many municipal lights as possible and encourage residents to do the same, not to take it out of a safety range, but to just give the birds a break. And during that time, people might look up and go, holy cow, look what's up there that we've been missing all these years. And another subject is a dark sky place designation, but I could talk for a couple hours on that, and I won't at this point. There's my pitch to join the IDA. And if you have questions or comments, that's my specific email and social media tag, nddarkskies@gmail.com, and at nddarkskies on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, everything. Yeah, I will open up the floor to questions or comments if you have it, and I'm going to minimize my presentation now so I can go back to seeing you.
Pat, I had a question. So we're at a Roosevelt school and we were talking about crime in the neighborhood and different issues that are happening. And one of the patrol officers stood up and said, well, the problem is we don't have enough lighting. We don't have street lighting. So you have more crime in your neighborhood because the mayor won't give me money for more lights. To which I knew nothing about it, but he did reference a study that said if you had more lighting, you had less crime. Now, we did put more lighting in that neighborhood, and I think that subjectively, now the neighborhood does better on crime, I think. But you make me ponder a bit if that's really true. We put more lighting in that neighborhood, and we've done more lighting in a variety of neighborhoods in the north side right now, with the idea it diminishes crime. So now you're going to make me go back to the police chief and ask if it really did work. Now, we did put in LED lighting, and we put in
This lighting, though?
directional, or always, Bruce.
Is it directional lighting, or is it this? Is
That
it-
part I don't know. And then the second part is that Bruce Grubb did report to us a little bit of how much we saved by doing traffic lights LED, which is tremendous. There's a tremendous savings.
Oh,
And
yes.
I think we tracked that we've saved a lot of money in the city of Fargo by converting to LED. So I wouldn't disagree with you on that. We would look at that. But Jeremy will probably, when he does his presentation, will tell you our population is split a little bit because we have some people want more lights, and your presentation is good about doing lesser light or lesser amount of light. And I think John's concerned about some of our health issues as well. If you have too much light, what might happen to you. So thank you for your presentation. He's got a lot to think about. But I will go back to our police chief and just say, because he referenced some study about how much light's in the neighborhood on safety. I'll see if that's somewhere, because you didn't have it in your stuff, so.
No, I do have some research that I've stored both locally at a G drive that I can give anybody that wants it the access to that. And the IDA actually has a page for research. It's called Allen Artificial Light at Night Database, and that's public. And they warehouse almost every journalistic article they can find and scholarly article on light pollution, including the pros and cons. So you're right. There typically is slight reductions when lighting is increased in a perceived high crime area. Whether or not that level of criminality stays reduced over time is the jury's probably still out at that. And you do need to consider, at least in our opinion, the other potential drawbacks of turning that nighttime area into daylight on the surface.
Go ahead, Bruce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's kind of funny. I was looking through the city's comprehensive plan. It's called Goal 2030. How long ago do you suppose we put that together, Nicole?
I think it was adopted in 2011.
Yeah. And of course, this is after we met with Patrick, but I found that under the water and environment section, which I helped author, but I just had forgotten about this. Initiative number 8 is light pollution. Pulled it right out of the Go 2030 plan. And the recommendations back in 2011 were to continue to look for ways to reduce excessive light while maintaining safety. So I don't think it's an either or type thing, in my opinion. Continue the recent utilization of full cutoff LED streetlight fixtures, which Jeremy will talk about in a little bit, and to encourage minimal uplighting. And I think that's what my takeaway is being the point here, and save energy and some of those things. And so I found it kind of interesting that in all the Go 2030 exercise, we looked at that a little bit and listed that as an objective for the city. So I just wanted to throw that out. I don't know how familiar all of you are with our comprehensive plan, but there we are.
Any questions for Patrick? Feedback? Patrick, that was a really provocative presentation, and I have a feeling that the results or the residual impact on us will go through time and will affect our discussions going forward because we're getting close to the point where we're going to say, okay, what are we going to do? And that will be one of the topics that will bubble up as to the arenas of where we can have an impact with this committee's guidance and leadership. One last call. Ben, did you have something? No? Okay. Anybody else said? Thank you very sincerely for sharing with us. One thought. Is that presentation you have digitally available to us?
Yeah, I've got a couple different versions of it on that Google Share Drive that I set up. I will upload this final version I created. And that'll be there. Mr. Grubb has access to that. I can send you an invite to it if you wish. It's a little big to send out via email, but you should be able to download it from that G Drive.
Great. We can tell you put a lot of work into sharing and presenting for us today. It's something you're passionate about, and that comes through clearly. Plus, there's a lot of information there that's solid.
There is. Every one of those slides could probably have an hour-long talk on its own, so it's a little tough to prioritize what to bring up.
Well, maybe we'll have you back again when we're breathing life into something that we do locally. And we look forward to it.
Thank you again.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you again for the opportunity.
Okay. Bruce, you want to introduce the next topic, number 5?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Patrick. Since the topic of light pollution or excessive lighting in a city can oftentimes be tied to street lighting, I guess that makes sense. We thought it might be good in our discussion today to hear from Jeremy Gordon about the city's street lighting strategy and how technology is changing and how the city is incorporating some of that new lighting technology in our street lighting system. So Jeremy, he joined us when we originally met with Patrick Summer, and I thought we had a really educational discussion. But Jeremy, I think you've got some slides loaded up to just show some examples of what we're doing today, and Jeremy's aware of directional lighting and this excessive lighting. I think that's the issue, and Probably has thought about that more than we realize, but I thought it'd be good for the committee to hear from Jeremy, so.
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. Thanks for having me today. Jeremy Gordon, transportation engineer with the city of Fargo. Many of you know me. I don't have quite as fancy a presentation as Patrick. Hats off to him. What I can tell you is I can kind of give you the state of the practice that the city's going through, where we're at, and I'll go through a whole bunch of slides here to kind of show you what kind of street lighting fixtures we have. I will say our city is about 99% lit up with streetlights. There are very few blocks left that don't have a city-owned streetlight on them. So I think this is a great discussion. Who knew streetlighting could be so exciting? So I'll just get right to it. So this is one of our Contempo streetlights. These have been around for 40, 50 years. They're very common. We probably have the most of these. This is probably our number one fixture in the city. We don't put any of these new in, but we maintain what we have. So this is, I think we've got both high pressure sodium and LED on this. So you can see it does have a roof on it, but when it does light up, it is not directionally going down. It's going sideways and down. Here's a couple examples. It's actually pretty inconspicuous pole and fixture. So I will say, fixtures, many of you may or may not know this. You can put any fixture on any pole. So when you buy this from the factory, it doesn't come with the pole and the fixture. They're interchangeable at the top. These are kind of the old school lights. So this is basically an arterial road light. This would also be like an old school utility wooden pole light. This would be either 250 or 400 watts of high pressure sodium. Pretty plain Jane looking light. We do have plenty of these around town too. Here's 32nd Avenue South. Here's beautiful Main Avenue. It comes on you can put it on a variety of poles. This is 52nd Avenue South, so we still use these on newer projects. And to fancy them up a little bit, we've painted some of them black, got some of them black. But that's another basic streetlight that we have. So as the city has grown, as the city has evolved, street lighting became an amenity to a neighborhood to dress it up. Clearly, those first two examples wouldn't dress really anything up. So this is the next feature streetlight. These come in high pressure sodium, and we can retrofit an LED fixture in there. So this is what you'll see on Broadway. This is a variety that you see on 8th Street South. And they very much go up and out. This is Rose Creek Edition. Here's the one on Broadway. I don't think the metal wrap does much to stop any of the light from going out and up. So as we kept growing, we've looked at better and easier fixtures. This is a pretty common fixture in South Fargo. This is one in my neighborhood. I think it's a great light. It does have a lid on it, but light still pretty much goes anywhere it wants to. It's very common to see these. In the Osgood edition, this is a street light. It's a very good light for going down. The high pressure sodium variety was very energy hoggish. When we retrofitted them to go to LED, we saved up to 90%. So this is what you'll see in the Osgood area. You'll see a teardrop downtown. These are pretty much all in the downtown area and a little bit out and about from downtown. Teardrop, not dark sky friendly. They light up pretty much everywhere. And they come in both high pressure sodium and LED as well. And like I mentioned, there are some developers that are very picky about the look and feel of their neighborhood. So this is a variety. I don't think it's the exact variety, but it's one of the streetlight fixtures that we have in the Rocking Horse edition. Very particular on what fixture we were going to use. I don't have a picture of this out in the field, but I think you can get my drift on the architecture of the light. So as we've advanced, as we've kind of gone from bidding out high pressure sodium fixtures, this is actually a fixture that there is no glass on the sides. The LED just comes straight from the top and goes down. These are pretty expensive, they're LED, but they do go straight down. Areas by Davies High School, these have been installed. And then on the arterial roadways, you might ask, well, I don't see fancy streetlights on our arterials. These are pretty much the state of the practice for busier streets. These are the cutoff. They do shine straight down. They're nothing to nothing to look at, but they're very efficient. And in the older parts of town, where we're adding these after the fact, like this is a project from 2 years ago on the north side, north of the dome, where there were no lights before. It's a 20-foot pole or a 16-foot pole, getting that light up to 20 feet. This goes very much down, and there is no spillover lights like in this situation. Like the old style light where light goes everywhere. The sidewalk would get lit, the street would get lit, there'd be spillover. In this situation, the sidewalk doesn't get much light. And we've heard that sometimes there's not enough light for the sidewalk. So people sometimes would like to have more light on the sidewalk. It's very directed. And unfortunately, when you buy these fixtures, you can't go back and change them to adjust the lighting at that point. This is 19th Avenue North, very inconspicuous. And this is the newer part of 52nd Avenue by Deer Creek. And then we don't own and operate these, but these are high mast light that the North Dakota DOT has on both interstates in town. They put out a ton of light. It is directional going down, but they still light up an area pretty good. And then, just like Patrick was mentioning, you don't think of temperature when you think of light, but that's all it's in Kelvin, so it varies. But you can see the very white light on the left going down to the I forgot what he called it, the incandescent, warmer light is what you'd say. So we pretty much use the three lights on the right. Our temperature that we've typically been putting out is about 3,000 Kelvin or 4,000 Kelvin. Al and I like to see 4,000 Kelvin, but we've got plenty of 3,000 out there as well. The high pressure sodiums that have not been converted, that are still out there, they put out that very white / even orangish light. So I like the whiter light at night just for visual purposes. I think looking when it's orange, yellow, I think it's kind of hard to see at night. And then I got one more slide here. We may talk about dimming, but these are our streetlight feed points. This is what powers up the streetlights. Streetlights in general are a very basic system. You have a photo eye on this feed point or on the light itself. Once the photo eye realizes it's dark outside, it just turns the breaker and it gets power. That's basically how it works. And then when it lights up in the morning, it sees light, shuts the system off. We can't get to these remotely. It's basically just an electrical system. We can't switch it on and off remotely. We don't dim today any of our circuits. So we've got just a little useless trivia, 15,000 lights plus or minus in town, 15,000. About 8 to 9,000 of them are still high pressure sodium. We probably changed over to LED on new projects probably 9 years ago. And then as the high pressure sodium bulbs get changed out, we're going to the LED bulbs. Well, we've got a ways to go to get converted to LED. 661 feed points like this of all shapes and sizes. Some of these are very new, like the one on the right. Some of them are very old, where you could walk up to it and probably push it over. It's rusted. It's in very poor condition. I will say one of these brand new runs these days right around $8,000 to $9,000, furnished and installed. And then one interesting thing I just figured out today, but we spend about $1 million a year on electricity for the streetlights. That's 20 cents a night per light, if you think of it like that. $5 a month. It ends up right on $1 million a year. So 20 cents a night. I thought that was really low, but I guess it does add up. So with that, Al Schumacher here, he's our maintenance operations manager for street lighting and traffic signals. He would be the techie guy if you have any real technical questions, but I can answer some of the ones at the top if you have any.
Jeremy, so go back one slide. So you see all the grooves in the glass? Doesn't that, I don't know if it's prisms or what, but can't you control the directional light with those too, with some of the newer fixtures?
No. So what we can do, so this is when we put something like this out, to a certain extent, yeah, but
Because on some of like downtown lights, the back side's not as lit as the front side, and I thought they did it through the cutting of
you
the glass.
can do that to a certain extent, but even when we want to do it even more, we'll take the top off this and basically put something in like aluminum foil so on the inside. I mean, that's how good the shielding is.
I would think you could use duct tape. Sorry.
Well, you could do both. You could do both. But yeah. Any other questions?
Go ahead, Bruce.
We talked a little bit when we met with Patrick about this, and 661 feed points, and each feed point controls a bank of lights, and this idea of dimming was kind of interesting. But in a situation like ours, Jeremy, would each light need its own dimmer, or can you dim through a control point, you know?
I think you would dim through the feed point, right at the feed point.
Yeah. Okay.
But I will say the older streetlights, it's not as easy. They've got a ballast where you got power going to the ballast. Ballast sends the power to the light. You couldn't really dim that system, but you could dim the newer LED systems. No, I will add one comment I forgot. So when Patrick was going through this, we should have a lights out event, which is kind of interesting. I like that idea. I like the idea of being able to dim. But we inadvertently had a lights out event in Deer Creek last week or the week before, where we were changing out one of we were bringing an electrical meter to two of our feed points. Well, Deer Creek has 3 feed points total. 2 of them didn't have power for 3 straight nights. And there were plenty of people that weren't excited about not having lights. So the lights out event would have to be short-lived and not take too many nights.
I think you want to plan ahead for that.
There.
So Jeremy, how many lights do we have to convert to LED? Did you say 9,000?
8,000 to 9,000.
And what would be the cost for that?
It depends. So, you know, the good and the bad is we've got a complex system. So some of those, the very first light I showed you, the Contempos, I mean, we got a lot of end of life fixtures. Like we have 30 to 50-year-old fixtures. We could replace this with a brand new fixture to LED, straight cutoff light going down. You could probably do that for $200-300 a pole. Or you could also just buy bulbs, and Al's been doing that. You can buy those for $50 to $60 per bulb.
But isn't your energy savings on each bulb so much? I mean, compared to what it takes to light this now, isn't like the energy cost comes down 20?
It's about 50% savings.
Yeah, okay.
So
John, can you find that in your budget somewhere?
So instead of 2 dimes, it'd be 1 dime a night.
Did I hear Blake or somebody on the phone? Maybe I didn't. Just if Blake or if anybody wants to join in, just get our attention.
Well, this is Patrick, and I'm still online watching this, and I wanted to point out that both this afternoon and in the earlier September meeting, and just from visual evidence wandering around town, Fargo is by far not as bad as it gets in terms of light pollution, even amongst peer communities of our size. We're doing an okay job. It's just that with so many lights yet to go, I would love it if the communities, not just Fargo, but Moorhead and West Fargo and everybody else, got out in front of it and made sure that with the rush and continued passion to save some money by converting to LEDs, they don't inadvertently make the problem worse. So I do appreciate the attention that's being paid to everything. This meeting has been fantastic. And I do like seeing all these fixtures. But yeah, just as long as we're cognizant that if all we're doing is swapping out a bulb, that the fixture may not be the best fixture to put that bulb in. So if you have 50 or 60-year-old fixtures, might be a good time to start looking at updating those as well with a plan.
Thank you, Patrick. I know, I don't know about everybody else, but I will never look at lights again the same. In fact, I'm going to be looking at lights more than I ever have before because there's no new interest in it. Greta, do you have something?
Yeah, I have a question. This is more from a homeowner perspective, but does a homeowner have any recourse if they're concerned about light pollution? Because, and adjacent to that, the backstory is my alley was paved, and in the process of paving the alley, they installed a street lamp basically right in my backyard, and I despise it. And I don't understand why we need lights in the alleys. So, have any thoughts on that?
So you have, the light is in the alley?
Yeah, it's in the alley.
I think that would be an Xcel Energy owned light. So that wouldn't have been part of the city's project. We don't have any lights in alleys. But you could certainly contact Sean, he left. Xcel Energy could certainly help you in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I just didn't understand why we had to have a street light put in when we paved the alley. Didn't make sense to me.
Greta, we can help you connect with them if you'd like to pass that question on. Absolutely. Anybody else? Yes, Al.
Here, Al.
Al, why don't you come up to the microphone? And so everybody knows Dave Leaker joined us while we were meeting. I didn't get a chance to introduce him earlier.
So the way the Xcel light works, if I'm a homeowner, I can call Xcel and say I want a light on that pole, and then they charge your monthly bill, like your monthly electrical bill, maybe $5 a month, $10 a month. So it's kind of privately funded and requested. So the city really doesn't, I don't know if we have any power over that.
But you want the light gone.
Well, I didn't request it.
Oh, you requested it?
No, I did not. But you're saying that maybe
So someone on the block could have requested it, is what I'm thinking.
It's a good question, Greta. That gets right down to the neighbors and the people who live there and how things impact them. Great discussion today. Anybody else have anything for Jeremy? Dave?
Maybe not for Jeremy, but if Patrick's still on the line, I'm familiar with
here.
Tucson and, their downlighting for, the observatories out there. Is there any other metropolitan areas that have totally adopted that or are working towards that?
The two big ones that have recently started pursuing this are Pittsburgh, which is more of a Tucson level city, but also of interest to me is Ann Arbor, Michigan. I consider them more of a peer with our metro area in terms of size and density, but both are relatively new. I do have their ordinances saved. Implementation, we will see what they save cash-wise, what the impact to the night sky issues are, but they are both pursuing this with ordinances. And it was Greta, right? She brings up an interesting point in that with the proliferation of information on this subject with groups like the IDA, I left the slide out of the presentation, but there are occasionally campaigns, petition campaigns, even some lawsuits that have made it through the court systems about light pollution. That light trespass issue is real. And if communities have an ordinance and are at least taking steps to mitigate such things, it acts as sort of a shield, much like we're shielding the light. It gets out ahead of multiple issues. But Pittsburgh is another one, Ann Arbor is another one, and both our ordinances are on that shared drive you have access to.
Thank you. And then maybe just a follow-up. So, with our snow cover in the wintertime, and you talked about reflectivity with the earth.
Yes.
I mean, aren't you basically 4 or 5 months out of the year, 6 months, depending on how bad a winter it is. I mean, you're going to get that reflection. I mean, I remember driving around Fargo, and it's almost daylight in the wintertime with the clouds and the reflection.
Yeah, no matter what, night lighting in Fargo in the winter is going to produce a heck of a treacherous driving situation, precisely because of that. Fresh snow, ice, there's glare coming at you from everywhere. So if you can do your best to not increase the problem by illuminating only what you desperately need illuminated, you're going to actually increase some safety aspects.
You know, this topic of a night out of lights is an interesting one. And I wonder if we could ever be nimble. For example, this last week, wouldn't it have been cool to say, okay, folks, we're having a very rare level of aurora borealis that we're not used to seeing, hardly ever. And if we could just at a moment like that, where something like that surfaces, shut the lights out and people can walk out their front yards and see the northern lights. Because I was looking out windows and you just can't see them from town. But we were in a moment's time that's really rare. So if ever something like that comes our way, it'd be nice just to say, hey, folks, just so you know, we have a really spectacular, or the falling stars that occasionally hit that, where you just have a sky full of falling stars. But the northern lights the last few nights would have been I think he referred to a religious experience, seeing the Milky Way, but it can be like that. And from in a city, wow. Anybody else?
That would be a fantastic goal, sir. And yeah, nimble would be one thing. You might get a few Deer Creek type responses, though, no matter what the situation up in the sky was. But being able to at least see such an event, maybe even on the outskirts of town, but still within city limits, would be phenomenal.
And to have suggestion to have a dark place in town. We're going to keep wrapping this meeting up. Thank you, Patrick, and thank you, Al, and thank you, Jeremy, for participating. Al has one more thing.
Just one thing. My number one complaint from people when a light is out is safety. They really, really are concerned about safety for vehicles, walking their dogs. So I hear it every time a light's out.
So there's a balance that we need to strike. We have one more agenda item we've added to the agenda. And Darla, if you could come up to the podium up there. The last meeting in September, Daryl Lewandowski, she's working with and represents the Plastic Bag Task Force, which is a regional group based out of Clay County. Why don't you just update us on who you are, what you do, because you were unable to attend in person, and then give us an update, Darla, on the project that we all partnered with you on.
Sounds great. My name is Daryl Lewandowski. As mentioned, I work for Clay County for the Plastic Bag Task Force. So I've been tasked with educating people about plastic bags and kind of why they're bad for the environment and why they end up as litter and those sorts of things. So we've gone in and we've targeted the 5th grade class of our local area because in 5th grade, it's a part of the educational system when they go over plastic films and those sorts of things. So the school gladly lets us in to help out with a little bit of that education. We do the plastic bag challenge in the spring, which just encourages kids to recycle the plastic bags. But we've kind of had a little bit of a gap with the education. So this year we wanted to try and do something a little bit different. So I created a PowerPoint slide to go over with the kids, and then it's narrated with a worksheet. And then they have to go over all of these answers in class with their teacher to make sure all the answers are correct. Then the students are sent home with that worksheet and the parents have to sign on the bottom. And then based off of what they learned and using that worksheet, they will create a piece of artwork that will go on a reusable bag that will be printed and distributed to all of the students. So when they turn in their artwork, they have to turn in that signed little worksheet that they have as well in order to get credit and to have their artwork submitted. So that way we not only target the students, but also the parents, and they get to see the information that their students are learning in class. Yeah, and I actually brought a few pieces of artwork if you guys would like to take a look at these, along with some of the worksheets stapled to the back. There's no projector or anything, so I can't put them up, but this is the worksheet here. Some really simple multiple choice, circle your answer type questions. And then we've got some great artwork here, this little one. We are still waiting on the rest of the designs to come in over the next few days. They were due on Halloween, so we had someone drop them off right as I was coming to the meeting today. But yeah.
Darla, hang on. New City Hall has a projector.
I didn't see one, I'm sorry.
I think you can put it.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
There you go. Look at that.
All So yeah, and then this worksheet here is pretty simple. It goes through basically slide by slide. Each question there's a slide, or on each slide there's a question, and then the answer is said throughout the narration, so it's really easy for the students to pick up on. And then at the very end, the teachers are given an answer key, like I mentioned, to go over to make sure that all the students have the correct information. But here's another piece of artwork. This one's really pretty as well. But these kids were super creative in what they came up with and what they wanted to put out there and, you know, put their names on. So once we decide on a winner, we'll have the bags printed. We're going to be printing around, I believe, 700 bags or so, and the cost for that is $4.29 a bag. The more we order, the cheaper that it gets. So we're looking at about $2,000 or so for the total cost of printing these bags. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less.
And Darla, were you able to get through with Blake in the school district, the Fargo School District? Did that connection happen?
Some of these classes are from Fargo. This one here, actually, that I'm taking all these designs out of is from Allie Sutherland. Doesn't say what school though, but it has a Fargo address. So I'm assuming that's the Fargo school. But it's going class by class, not necessarily grade by grade. Some teachers are really busy. There's an art teacher in Glendon that is actually taking care of this. So her students in the art department are being given this presentation and having them turn in their artwork. It's not going by the actual 5th grade class. So yeah, we kind of left it up to the schools to decide how they want to, you know, distribute this and get their students to participate to make it easier for them because the school year is so busy.
And this is our first project that we've embarked upon. So we're getting our feet wet.
Yeah.
with a trial
Us
balloon.
too,
But
yeah.
thank you for bringing it to us, Darla, and for giving us an opportunity to partner across the river and with you all to do this in our school systems.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. You know, these kids really appreciate it, and you know, hopefully in the future we'll benefit from the education that we've provided to these students, and they can pass it along.
Anybody else have any questions or anything, feedback for Darla? Bruce, you'll follow up with her on the budgeting and aspects of that. We will.
I will.
I'll be happy to help you. Okay. We've got the mayor here, so if there's any budget questions. Any public comment? I don't see anybody out there, but we always welcome public comment. If anybody wants to, they know they can join up with us. We're gonna be meeting every other month, it looks like, but going forward, now that we've had several months of learning and engaging where we're at in our community, getting an assessment of what we have done in our region. Now it's time to each of us to kick our wheels in gear, and we'd really like ideas of, if you have a suggestion like the plastic bag, just to show we can do something, let's be thinking of what we can do, what action items might come from our group, what type of commitments we could make or things we could advance to the cities or to the jurisdictions, to the parks, to the schools, to the cities, to the neighbors. But let's look for something. We don't have to change the world tomorrow, but we can start with something. So each of you, as you're contemplating our role in this topic, don't be hesitant to bring an idea forward and say, let's brainstorm. You know, and we have some really great partners at the table who really can connect us fast and deliver a lot. So I challenge each of you to open up your minds, not your little minds, but open up your minds a little bit to let something bubble up and share it then with us. And you just never know when something will get legs. Am I saying that correctly, Bruce, about how we could go forward?
Yes, I've been feeling a little bit guilty. We've been kind of overeducated here, and I was thinking about, is there some sort of actionable, I would volunteer to be the author of a report of action, making a recommendation to the city commission out of this committee, and that'd be kind of exciting as long as it isn't too over the top and something achievable. It'd just be really fun for me to put something on the commission agenda out of this committee at some point.
I agree completely, and because we don't want to just talk. We don't, you know, we want, if there's something we can accomplish, that's what it's all about. One last topic before we adjourn, not a topic, but I believe there's an immense focus growing in North Dakota right now. And we had, the first I learned about it was Jen Sweatman, who presented to us. I was really unfamiliar then, especially with the topics of carbon capture and carbon sequestration. And she talked to us about the plant systems. And you know, I saw a thing on Madagascar that's in a global drought right now. And they have root systems that go down a few hundred feet. I go, that's exactly what we were learning about. But either way, carbon capture, carbon sequestration is going to be a very big topic in North Dakota. It already is. And so I'm looking forward and thinking that that's something our group could learn as much as we can about as soon as we can, because North Dakota's role in this will be gargantuan. Some say it's the new gold rush coming in a sense of the capabilities here in the state to take carbon and put it down into the below the geological plates. So this is a topic I'm open to. And if we have suggestions or presenters or topics that we can bring forward, and you're, Paul, in that field already, I can tell you're ready to already educate me.
Well, we are working with a project called Project Tundra on carbon capture that you probably are aware of or heard of. And I would be able to line up a speaker that would be able to speak on that to this committee. If you would like for that to happen, I can make that happen.
We would.
Okay, I'll just get back to Bruce on a timeline that will work for us. And
Paul, can you incorporate a couple things? So there is a proposal before the state to bring gas over to the eastern part of the state. There's a proposal on the carbon capture and what the governor has committed himself to do, and I think it's 50 years of storage that you can get on carbons right now, if not more. And then the third item is hydrogen. So we're getting a little push now is should we start a hydrogen in our landfill or somewhere else in the community where the city of Fargo starts getting involved in carbon capture into hydrogen. And interesting, Amazon is here with its million square feet of space.
Yep.
And all the forklifts are managed by hydrogen. And they're all, it's very quiet in there. It doesn't make a lot of noise.
Yep.
But it's also very, potentially can explode into other things. You have to
volatile.
handle a little different, like Ben, right?
It's highly
You can't have
volatile,
your
yeah.
cell phone next to it, which I was surprised to take a phone call, next thing you know, you're puff, but.
Yeah, it's interesting technology as you're looking at it. It's great when you're doing a ground up build for a facility and you can incorporate those things in, but it is very volatile and how you treat it and handle it is important. So looking to the future, as anything, we look at all our facilities and what we can do and how we can build them better. So I know that the solid waste is considering some different technology with vehicles, and as we move, that's the important thing as we look to the future.
And I'd be remiss not to say that in the context of the world conversation today, with climate action being desperately needed, we can act locally and think globally. And it's our job to do what we can. We're not insulated from the world. Just because there's so few of us here, we maybe don't have the same impacts as cities where you can't even see the building next to you because of pollution. But this is our opportunity right here locally now. We've gotten to know each other a little bit. We now know we have a framework. We have government jurisdictions participating and partners. So let's give ourselves permission to think, okay, what can we do locally? What should we do locally? And how can we do it? And start with what we can do. But so we don't need to be shy with regards to the world situation and how it is here at home for us. It's a big conversation right now, and it's as important to us as anybody. And we can make decisions here. Not everybody can. And we have the mayor here, and he can breathe life into things. We have the city administrator here. We have the department heads here. We have the ability here to really put our fingerprint on action if we choose to. And we get to if we want. So I'll leave it at that. Anything else for the good of the order? Be thinking of suggestions for our group. Our next year will be our first year where we can let's put our focus on what can we do, and how do we do it? And again, we're not failures if we don't, but let's be looking for opportunities. Bruce?
Not related, but don't forget to turn your clock back Sunday. I always do that.
Okay. Anything else? We stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody.